live stream. I'm on my iPad right now instead of my iPhone, so this is the first stream that I'm doing from the iPad that's balanced against something. So excuse the weird hairdo, and welcome to the Sunday live stream. So just everybody, just hang on 1 second. I'm gonna go get my phone, which is charging, and I'm gonna post this to Chris White's Telegram group if anybody wants to check it out. I understand that it's Valentine's Day. Most of you guys have other things to do right now, but right here, actually in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, we are under a winter storm warning. It is ice may come and it may hit the power lines, and the south and the southern part of the U.S. Everybody panics when there's a little bit of ice or a little bit of snow. So I've been preparing for the winter storm all day, making sure I have plenty of water in my refrigerator, making sure I got plenty of food, making sure family's got plenty of food, and just been running errands all day. So, Linda Von Ruin says, hello, Brett. Happy Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day to you too, Linda. Hope everybody is having a great day, or has had a great day, had a romantic dinner with your significant other, just done whatever. And so hope you guys are doing well. Now, with that being said, here it's a little bit different. Everybody's preparing for the winter storm. Not too many people are going out because of that. So hang on, let me go get my phone. I will be right back in like 10 seconds, and just hang on 1 second. All right. Now, Ronaldo Host has reached over 100,000 subscribers, and I did a video on that. So props to Ronaldo for reaching that milestone. That is awesome. I have 931 subscribers. I am 69 subscribers away from reaching 1,000 subscribers. So guys, please. Oh, and this is COVID hair. I've not had because I've been cautious with the COVID. I've not had a haircut in over a year. But since the vaccine I had my second dosage of the Pfizer, I'm gonna have almost 97% immunity from the COVID in a couple of days. I'm gonna be getting a haircut soon, so you guys will not have the mad scientist haircut much longer. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this posted to Chris White's Telegram group if anybody wants to so people know about it. So just hang on 1 second. And okay, what I was going to talk about as well is two things that I'm going to talk about today. This is newer updates. One thing I'm going to talk about is Mozambique, and the other thing I want to talk about is serial killers. Now, if you guys want to post in there and comment, I'll talk about whatever you guys want to talk about as well. So just hang on 1 second. And posting streaming at the moment. All right. All right, now here we go. Here's the latest in Mozambique. Okay, well, two things. One, South Africa has done a stupid thing by reopening about 20 of their land borders. What's that going to cause to do? It's going to cause the South African variant of the COVID to spread like wildfire all over the continent of Africa. And the South African variant, the 501v2 strain, is becoming a significant problem in Malawi, and it's becoming a significant problem in Mozambique. Well, it's already a significant problem in both those countries. And the more the land borders are going to be reopened, the more that the 501v2 strain is going to spread throughout South Africa and throughout the continent of Africa. Because like in Mozambique right now, there are only about 4 or 5 places in the entire country that one can get free COVID-19 testing. A lot of the hospitals in Mozambique are not fit to handle the COVID-19 crisis. And like in the capital, Maputo, where the central hospital is, Sky News reported this yesterday. There is, hey Brett, love the new streaming setup, looks awesome. Yeah, basically, Yanni, all I've done was I put my iPad next to my DirecTV satellite box is holding it up, so that way I don't have to hold my That way I don't have to hold my iPad or my iPhone. I've done that with my iPhone, but I figured out how to do it with my iPad so I can be a little bit backward from the camera, so I don't have to be right up in the grill, of the camera, like I was with my iPhone. Bigger screen here. Well, the central hospital is not fit to have to handle the COVID-19 crisis. Many of the one of the girls said, awesome idea. Well, thank you. You can thank Rebellious Ruth for that. She suggested it, actually. You can thank Rebellious Ruth for that. Well, okay, the central hospital is not fit to handle the COVID-19 crisis. The workers at the central hospital in Maputo are working 14-hour days right now. And the South African strain has hit Mozambique really, really hard, according to Sky News. Then on top of that, a lot of northern Mozambique in Cabo Delgado has been displaced because of the Islamic insurgency that's taking place. And in a lot of those refugee camps, they're living together in close quarters. Cholera has already spread, and it's probably going to be a matter of time before the COVID-19 pandemic spreads in those refugee camps. But back to the capital, Maputo. Yes, Maputo, there's not much COVID-19 testing. The doctors and nurses right now are on 14-hour days trying to cope with the COVID-19 crisis. The official numbers are about 47,000 COVID-19 cases and about 500 deaths. But a lot of people in Mozambique says those numbers are being underreported, not intentionally, but with all the crisis that is happening in Mozambique, that they believe that the numbers are a lot higher. So I believe that South Africa reopening its land borders, its 20 different land borders, is just going to cause the COVID-19, South African COVID-19 variant to spread like wildfire. And I just believe that that is going to be an astronomical problem and an astronomical crisis for the entire continent of Africa, not just South Africa. That is what I firmly believe. Okay. Now, apparently, some people, particularly with Sarko, liked when I talked about serial killers. One of the ones that I've looked up. Now, I really like the Canadian military, and I respect what they do. They're a vital ally to the United States. But just like in any military, there's a mild percentage of bad soldiers. Well, they had an evil one who was a pilot, who ended up being a serial killer, a serial burglar, and a serial rapist, named Russell Williams. He was a lieutenant colonel in the Canadian Air Force, and he studied economics in college. He had a degree in economics, and then after that, he went on to be a pilot in the Royal Canadian Air Force. He liked the movie Top Gun. It came out when he was in university, and he was a lot of his roommates thought he was obsessed with the movie and obsessed with the idea of doing it, but he went ahead and did it. And he wanted to be a fighter pilot, but that didn't work out. But he became a transport pilot. And when Queen Elizabeth II visited Canada, he flew the pilot. He was the pilot of the plane that flew Queen Elizabeth around. But somewhere along the line, after he commanded Trenton Air Force Base, Canadian Forces Base Trenton, that's where a lot of Canadian soldiers flew from Canada to Afghanistan to assist the U.S. military. Well, a lot of homes started getting broken into. And he started stealing girls' underwear, and he stole women's bras as well. And he would take pictures, selfies of himself in that underwear. It was just a sick, sadistic situation, and the burglaries eventually resorted to murder. Well, this one Canadian family went on vacation, and they came home, and the daughter, who was about 15 years old, noticed some underwear missing from her drawer, and her parents originally laughed about it because, as most 15-year-olds are, she was a slob, and they thought she was just being a slob and not paying attention to her laundry. Well, she also noticed, she went into her closet and she found out some of her outfits were missing as well. And the police came in there, confirmed it was a break-in, and they ran DNA testing, and they found some semen on the dresser drawer, which is a sick situation. Well, over time, a lot of those burglaries turned into murder. And actually, the first person he murdered was the stewardess who was an Air Force stewardess on his own plane, the plane that he flew and flew dignitaries around the country. He had a stewardess named Corporal Marie-France Como. She was a French-Canadian, and the reason she joined the Air Force by and large was to see the world and to be able to travel, and she was able to do that with the assignment that the Air Force assigned her to. Well, Corporal Marie-France Como was found dead in her home, and as arrogant and overconfident as Russell Williams was, he sent a condolence letter to Marie-France Como's family, saying, "I lost a good person that I commanded. I am deeply sorry of your incident. I'm deeply sorry for your incident." But he ended up being the killer. And then on top of that, even though he was her commander, he did not attend her funeral, which was a sick situation. Well, weeks later went by, and he murdered a civilian lady named Jessica Lloyd. and he went to a neighbor's piece of land to try to dump the body. Well, unbeknownst to him, the police caught the tire marks outside of Jessica Lloyd's house. So all throughout the Ontario province, they set up a lot of roadblocks. Now, they set up a lot of roadblocks and took pictures of the tires and of the roadblocks they set up. Well, Russell Williams was in one of those roadblocks, and they were able to match the tires pretty quickly. And Russell Williams, they said, "Can you come in for questioning?" He volunteered to. He thought he could beat the system because he was an Air Force officer, a commander of Trenton Air Force Base, and respected throughout the community. Well, they said, once they said the tires matched, they did a brilliant interrogation on him, and he confessed to the murder of Jessica Lloyd, and then they swabbed DNA on his mouth, and then they also found the DNA on his boots, and the DNA matched the other DNA that was at Jessica Lloyd's place, and also Marie France Como. So he is basically sentenced. He's basically going to be in prison for over 40 years for the murder of these two ladies, and it was just a sick situation. And there was one time before he started killing, when he broke into this one person's house, the lady was there, and he physically assaulted her and raped her for about 5 or 6 hours. And on top of this, I don't know when he slept, because he had a schedule where he maintained an Air Force base. He had a wife, saw his wife most weekends, didn't have any children, but he also participated in several charity events that the Air Force sponsored. General Angus Watt, who was one of the highest commanders in the Canadian Air Force, ordered the burning of Russell Williams uniforms. He also ordered, all the medals that Russell Williams won to be melted, and rightfully so. This was a disgraceful thing. Now, Colonel, as a Christian, I have to forgive Russell Williams for what he did, but I don't know if General Angus Watt's a Christian or not, but he says he can never forgive Russell Williams for what he did and for the disgrace that, the scar that he put on the Royal Canadian Air Force for what he did, which was a very sick, sadistic situation. And he was, where a lot of these burglaries and murders occurred was called Tweed, Ontario, close to Canadian Forces base in Trenton, and he was known as the Tweed Creeper, which the police should have suspected an airman all along, because when Russell Williams went to the United States for a few weeks to meet with U.S. forces discussing a situation in Afghanistan, during that time, the break-ins and the murders had stopped. So the police probably should have caught on this a lot sooner. It's just Russell Williams, for the longest time, was above suspicion. Now, it seems like he may be repentant for what he did. I mean, he tried to commit suicide in prison. He had used up all his toilet paper and the cardboard that holds the toilet paper roll together. He tried to eat it to commit suicide, but it was a failed suicide attempt. His wife has since divorced him. His wife divorced him in prison, and his wife had filled out, and they signed the paperwork there. So that was the Canadian murderer Russell Williams, otherwise known as the Tweed Creeper. There's a lot of stuff about him on YouTube. You can check it out, and they offer a lot of key information. He broke into this one civilian lady. She was a civilian but employed by the Air Force. She was a music teacher on base at the base's high school. Well, he broke in, and I was, I guess, hiding in her closet at times, because when she went in there to get some belongings, when she found out he broke in first, but she went in there to get some belongings to go, she found some writing on the computer that said, "Don't worry, you're going to be," and there was the typing on the computer screen that said, "You're going to be scared to tell the police about the purple dildos in your house." And that's one reason it took the long, and he stole the dildos too, as far as I can. That's one reason they were, her and her husband were reluctant to go to the police, because they thought they were going to be embarrassed, because it was mostly sex toys of her and her husband that he stole. So he's just an all-around sick, sadistic dude. But hopefully he's been repentant of his crimes and repentant of his situation. Also, this one family he befriended that were neighbors. They had a little girl. The couple had a little girl, and he spent a lot of time with the little girl. And he didn't molest her, but according to her and according to the family. But one time he did break in. He confessed to breaking into the house and just staring at the little girl while she slept, which was a sick situation. And the authorities also did find child porn on Russell Williams' computer. He didn't confess to that one, but the authorities did find child pornography on his computer. So that's the story about the Canadian killer Russell Williams. Now, I don't know if you guys have heard of two American serial killers. Talk about Ted Bundy and then talk about the Green River Killer. Actually, I'm going to talk about the Green River Killer first. The Green River Killer, a guy by the name of Gary Leon Ridgway, he said his goal was to kill as many women that he thought were prostitutes as possible. And he confessed to, I believe, over 200 murders of prostitutes. And he pled guilty to be spared the death penalty. When he was caught, he pled guilty so he could be spared the death penalty. But the judge, Richard Jones, who's an African American judge, by the way, and I thought he did a good job here. Richard Jones said that, okay, you plead guilty, but you need to face all the victim's family and let the victim's family speak to you and talk about and so you can know what you took from them. And the first body that was discovered was in 1982 in Kent, Washington State, off Peck Bridge. She was under some pilings in the Green River, and it was a lady by the name of Wendy Lee Caulfield. She was a prostitute, and she was recently sentenced to a juvenile detention home, but for her crimes, for drugs and prostitution. But she also had a 24-hour pass to leave and go see her family. But after the 24-hour pass, she never returned. And and the reason Wendy Lee Caulfield was identified after the body was found is because a tattoo artist saw the article in the paper of the body that was found, and all the tattoos were described, and he said those were the tattoos that I designed on her. That was my work. And so he called and said that was him. I mean, that he was that's Wendy Lee Caulfield, and I was her tattoo artist. So that's how they knew it was Wendy Lee Caulfield. Well, Gary Ridgway was a truck painter, and he was a truck painter in the factory, and a lot of the people at the factory thought he was very meticulous and very diligent and a hard worker, but kind of odd that there was just something about him that didn't seem right. But to his casual neighbors, hey Brett, Yanni, and Linda, hey, how are you guys doing? Hey Leanne, how are you? Hope all is well. Well, okay, well then a few weeks later, there was a body of Deborah Lynn Bonner that was discovered, and this was by factory workers at the PD&J meat factory company. They saw her body on the Green River underneath a bunch of branches. Well, her boyfriend and pimp said, that's my girlfriend's body, and he confessed to being her pimp, and he saw her get into a truck, and he was following the truck, but then he lost the truck while he was following the truck, and he believes that he couldn't see who the John was, but he believes that that's who killed Deborah Lynn Bonner. Well, I believe the truck that he gave matched Gary Ridgway's description of the truck that he had. Well, Gary Ridgway took a polygraph test and he passed it. But that doesn't always mean anything. A lot of sociopaths and psychopaths are very cold liars, and they don't get aroused, or their heart doesn't go up when they lie. So that doesn't always mean anything. So first he took a polygraph test and he passed. But more murders keep coming, and eventually Gary Ridgway goes to questioning, and they get a DNA sample. And the DNA sample was found on some of the victims. And that's how, and he pleads guilty to the crimes in the exchange that he is spared the death penalty. And he was known as the Green River Killer. And the reason he gave for killing all these prostitute women was, he said when he went into the Navy, the U.S. Navy, and he was in the U.S. Navy for about 2 years, he screwed a lot of prostitutes when he was in port. Well, he got a lot of minor STDs like VD, chlamydia, herpes, and he was able to keep them under control, but he still didn't live a normal life after that. So he blamed prostitutes for a lot of his problems that he had. That was his justification. Now, it's a weak justification. Now, he had a screwed up home life. His father was a bus driver and was very religious, but at the same time, his father would talk to him about the evils of prostitutes and the evils of sex workers, but then would go and buy prostitutes himself and screw the prostitutes on the side. His mother also dressed very, very provocatively, very, very, very short skirts, very like tank tops. And during the time in the 60s and the 70s when he grew up, that was not normal. And he also admits to sometimes seeing his mother in those skimpy clothes and being aroused by her. One time he had a bedwetting incident, which is common for serial killers. They'll bedwet well into their teenage years or well into their preteen years. He had a bedwetting incident, and his mother dragged him to the tub and washed his genitals. It was a very sick situation. And one of the African-American prostitutes that he murdered, a lady by the name of Marcia Faye Chapman, she was, when the detectives on the scene saw Marcia Faye Chapman's body in the river, it's like she was reaching her hand out for help, asking the detectives to help her find the killer. And he also, after he raped and killed Marcia Faye Chapman, he shoved pebble rocks from the river into Marcia Faye Chapman's vagina. It was just a sick situation. And Marcia Faye Chapman did what she could to support and feed her family. She was just a single African American mother in the 80s with 3 kids, and she tried to get a regular job, but just based on the circumstances she had, she just did what she could to try to, pay the bills. And when the detective saw Marcia Faye Chapman reach her hand out, that is what really persuaded them to go after the Green River Killer. And a lot of the detectives spent extra time away from their families. They worked day and night. They worked to try to find this killer. And a lot of the detectives told the prostitutes, and a lot of Christian organizations did too, that to try to find other work, and then if you feel like you can't find other work, please carry, they advised them to work in pairs, or if they couldn't do that, then carry a gun with them for protection. And there's a lot of documentaries out there on the Green River Killer. One of the detectives that was most directly responsible, I believe, for catching Gary Leon Ridgway was a guy named Dave Reichert. Dave Reichert actually headed the Green River Task Force for a little while, and he's a family man with a strong Christian ethic. And the murder of Marcia Faye Chapman really touched a lot of the detectives, as I've said, and it caused them to work as hard as they could to catch the killer. To say that most cops or all cops are racist towards African Americans is just outright bullshit. That story right there shows that a lot of cops are not racist, and a lot of cops do care about African Americans, because they were really sad and upset when Marcia Faye Chapman was murdered by Gary Leon Ridgway. All right, I'm going to talk about Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy is known as Theodore Robert Bundy. That's his full name. He was born on November 24th, 1946. And he was born right after World War II, and in a time where illegitimate births were rare, very rare for any segment of society. And he was born in a home called Elizabeth Lunn's Home for the Unwed Mothers. But a lot of people joked and said that's called Lizzie Lunn's Home for the Naughty Ladies. Well, he was born there, and his mother was Eleanor Louise Cowell. And the birth certificate said that the father was an Air Force pilot named Lloyd Marshall, who had just basically either abandoned the family or didn't know he got her pregnant. It could have been that too. Because if you got pregnant and were out of wedlock, typically it wasn't publicized. It wasn't, the thing to do to let people know. Well, what we do know is that when the mother had moved 3,000 miles from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, which is where Ted grew up most of his early life, to Washington State. And she met Johnny Culpepper Bundy at a social at a Methodist church. And that's where Ted Bundy gets his name. His stepdad adopted him. He was known as Theodore Robert Bundy. But most people just called him Ted. But yes, Ted lived a facade. When he was in Philadelphia, he was told his grandparents were his parents and his mother was his older sister. And Ted kind of sensed, even from an early age, that he was living a lie. However, that some people lie out of love too. So that you can't really blame that. And he blamed that for his hatred of women and also his hatred of just people in general, particularly his mother. But the mother lied out of love to try to protect him, because out of wedlock births were a very antisocial stigma at that time. But she moved Ted to Washington State, and according to him, his mother never told him that she was the mother and not the sister. He just kind of figured that out himself. And also, when he traveled from Washington State back to the East Coast to visit relatives, he went to the archives and saw his birth certificate. And on the birth certificate, it was stamped illegitimate. However, a lot of other people have grown up under very worse circumstances that have not gone on to kill people. Now, his first attack was on January 8th, 1974, that we know of, and it was Joni Lynn's. Fortunately, Joni survived the attack, but he broke into Joni Lynn's basement and bludgeoned Joni to death, and then slammed a bed rod into her vagina, which was a sick situation. But fortunately, Joni survived the attack, but she also had didn't remember anything 10 days before the attack and 10 days after, and she also still had permanent brain damage. But fortunately, like I said, she survived the attack. But a lot of other women were not fortunate at all. Like I said, a lot of other women were not fortunate at all. One of his early victims was a University of Washington psychology student named Linda Ann Healy. And Linda Ann Healy was supposed to have she had the morning ski report in a radio show, but she didn't show up for work. And the room was clean when they searched the room, but then they also found drops of blood on her nightgown. And eventually they found her remains in one of the mountains in Washington State. Ted Bundy would take a lot of these dead bodies to the mountains and engage in necrophilia with them, which was a sick situation. And most serial killers don't know they're evil, or they don't think they're evil, but Ted Bundy admitted he was evil. He said, "You will not find a man any more cold-hearted than me." Ted Bundy knew he was evil, and he admitted he was evil. And he was just straight up evil. And we believe that the killing started not after he found out, well, two things. When he found out he was an illegitimate child, and then two, when he was dating this woman at the University of Washington, where he went to university. He graduated high school in 1965, but he went to university at the University of Washington, and he was dating this lady named Stephanie Brooks. And Stephanie Brooks was a couple of years older than Ted, and when she graduated college, she just basically said the relationship was over. She thought Ted was handsome and fun to be with, but she also found him very immature, found that he couldn't make plans for his life, and so she just basically ended the relationship. Well, when she terminated the relationship, plus he found out he was illegitimate, many forensic psychologists believe that that's what set him off, where he went to go kill a bunch of women. And that's where, shortly thereafter, he attacked Joni Lynn's in her bedroom. And that's what happened. But actually, and then he moved to Utah to go to law school. One of his first victims in Utah was a high school student named Melissa Smith, who was the daughter of the police chief in the area. Well, she was riding her bike to go to a friend's house. Instead of riding on the road, she took some shortcuts out in the woods, and Ted was waiting there, and he killed her. Just a sick and sadistic situation. We don't know how many victims Ted had. He took that one to his grave. The FBI agents and the cops said, "We believe, Ted, you've killed 36 people." Ted said, "If you add one more digit, you got that." But we don't know if he meant 37. We don't know if he meant 136, or we also don't know if he meant 360. He just said add one digit to 36 and you got it. Well, he was in Utah for a little while, but how he actually got in jail was Carol Durant. He tried to kidnap Carol Durant. He said he was a police officer named Officer Roseland, but the identification was in pencil. He stopped Carol Durant in a mall parking lot, and Carol Durant had, and he said, "I need you to come to the station with me. Somebody has been breaking into cars." But she also smelled alcohol on him, and then she started questioning him. She said, "Where are we going? Why did you bring me into your car?" Yeah. Well, he tried to handcuff her to the seat, but she fought off and got out of the car and then flagged this older couple down and just begged them to take her to the police station. And the cops told her it was a fake officer. And then, yeah, and that's what happened. And that the attempted kidnapping of Carol Durant. And he was in jail for that, but then he escaped. And then he went to Colorado, and then in Colorado he was caught again and escaped, and then made his way to Florida. And Florida was where eventually he was caught. He was actually caught running a stop sign, and he tussled with a Pensacola police officer, David Lee, Pensacola, Florida police officer. And David Lee is the one that arrested him. And then that's when he found out he was Ted Bundy. So that's that. So if you guys have any comments, any questions, feel free to ask me. I talked about Africa earlier, and Mozambique seems like a beautiful country, and I really do want to visit Mozambique. But right now, with the climate, with the South African COVID strain hitting Mozambique, the corruption and the incompetency of the Mozambican police force, and then number 3, the situation in Cabo Delgado, I just don't feel like I can, go there and it be a safe place. There are a lot of beach resort bars near the beach that have been accused of putting date-rape drugs in a lot of drinks. Now, that's more dangerous for female tourists versus male tourists, but the Mozambican police, everything I've read, you need to look at them with suspicion and only go to them for last resort, because a lot of times you just can't trust them. A corruption runs rampant in Mozambique with the cops, and then also the cops also, how do you say this? The cops also are just, sometimes even if they're not corrupt, they're just not trained, and they're inept and incompetent, and really are not in a specific position to help you. Now, I know a lot of South African tourists do visit Mozambique, and they talk about how beautiful the beaches are, and a lot of them love going there, but there have been cases too where South African tourists have been harassed in Mozambique and robbed. So I would probably say, like I said, Mozambique may be safer than South Africa, but I still don't think it would be safe enough to go on a vacation based on the lack of security that I've seen with a lot of resorts. So if you guys have any comments or any questions about Mozambique and the current situation there, or if you guys visited, please type in the comment section, and I'll be happy to comment or answer your questions. I don't know if you guys saw the last live stream, but the Central African Republic, what's going on right now is the Muslim and the Christian rebels in the Central African Republic have signed an uneasy alliance with each other to try to topple the Touadera presidency. Touadera recently was declared the victor in the last presidential election, but Touadera only got 35% of the votes when he was declared winner of the presidency in the Central African Republic. And so the rebels thought that was not right. And then also Bozizi, who was a president ousted in 2013, the Central African Republic Supreme Court said that Bozizi couldn't run for president this election because Bozizi wasn't a good person. And Bozizi had a lot of corruption issues, I'm not saying that, but it doesn't look like that Touadera was a good person either. And I'm not rooting for the rebels either. Let me explain this. There's a lot of aid trying to be given by Christian churches and Muslim charities Also just secular charity organizations that are at the border with, I believe, Cameroon or Chad. But they're a lot of the rebels are holding this food and this medicine hostage, and a lot of market workers are earning 70% less than what they earned last year because a lot of the rebels are holding a lot of this stuff hostage. So right now with the Central African Republic, it's just a mess. Excuse my language, but it's a clusterfuck right now. The Central African Republic also has the lowest lifespan in the world. The average person in the Central African Republic only lives an average of 54 years. They have the lowest lifespan in the world. And the average person is being displaced through a lot of this fighting, and they're going to the capital, Bangui, which is basically their capital, and the capital is a lot more stable than the countryside. But they're intense right outside of the capital, and they only could take a few pots and pans and a few clothes. They had to flee their home in an emergency and really couldn't take all of their belongings. So please, like I said, keep the Central African Republic in your prayers. Also, with South Africa, they, it's just the ANC. Look, South Africa is never going to be okay unless the ANC gets voted out of power. Plain and simple. And as I pointed out, they were right to scrap the AstraZeneca vaccine because it's only 15 to 20% effective against the 501v2 strain. But their public health care facilities should be able to deal with the COVID-19 crisis better had the ANC not embezzled money. Let me explain. Why do people still vote for the ANC? Why? Ever since the ANC took power, crime has increased. Corruption has increased. The infrastructure, quality of life has gone down. The COVID-19 is a rampant crisis. The economy's gone down. South Africa's currency is still in junk status. Ramaphosa has done absolutely nothing to get South Africa's currency out of junk status. Okay? Also, one thing I saw on Al Jazeera, there were a lot of news organizations in South Africa that have been accused, and Al Jazeera was right to report this, of being bribed by the South African government. The South Africans' intelligence services, like their CIA, instead of monitoring foreign threats to South Africa, which is what their job is to do basically, and domestic threats, they went to news agencies. A lot of their agents went to news agencies, and they paid these news reporters to give pro-government coverage. That was very rampant under the Zuma administration, and Al Jazeera had recently reported this, and I was glad that Al Jazeera did. They reported that their CIA went to various news organizations in Africa and paid them to give pro-Zuma government coverage. Now, we don't know if this is still going on under the Ramaphosa government or not, and I really can't say that it is with certainty, but I also can't say it is not with certainty, because there's a lot of problems right now under the Ramaphosa government that happened under the Zuma government. Example, they got millions upon millions of dollars in COVID-19 grants. Well, 17.9 million US dollars worth has been embezzled by the ANC. And that is something that we know about right now. That's just what we know about. There's no telling how much other money had been embezzled that we don't know about. Now, that being said, maybe one day, if the ANC gets out of power, I'd like to visit South Africa. And if the COVID-19 gets better, because the more powerful of the COVID strands, the 501v2 strain, accounts for 90% of South Africa's current COVID-19 cases. But fortunately, the vaccine I have is 70 to 80% effective against the South African strain. But I do eventually want to go diving in a cage with great white sharks. That sounds like something I'd really want to do. I've always been fascinated with sharks. I wouldn't go outside the cage, but I'd like to go in a cage and go diving with the great white sharks. And South Africa has that, where you can go diving in a cage with great white sharks. I'd ask you if any of you guys have done it. Have you guys gone scuba diving in cages with great white sharks? And I also want to do an African safari one day. The closest thing I've come to doing an African safari, which has been amazing, but it's not a genuine African safari, if you go to Disney's Animal Kingdom. and they have what you call a Kilimanjaro safari, and it's very good. I enjoy it, but it's not genuinely African. I would like to do a genuine African safari. So get the comments going. What about you guys? Have you guys ever done an African safari? And have you guys ever done diving or, diving with the sharks? Because those are two things that I would really, really like to do in South Africa. I also would like to visit the Apartheid Museum in Johannesburg. I've seen things like that on YouTube. It actually looks very, very interesting, and it sounds like something I would like to see as well. And have any of you guys ever been to Apartheid Museum in Joburg? Ask my viewers here. I mean, if any of you guys have ever been to the Apartheid Museum. So that's it. That's what I would like to do in South Africa. But at the moment, right now, if the COVID ever gets better, I'm leaning more towards Zambia and Namibia because the situations there are a little bit stable. Okay, Linda Monroe said, never done any of those things. Well, a lot of people haven't. When I was in South Korea, I talked to South African English teachers. A lot of them said they haven't either. So yeah. But Zambia, they have the Victoria Falls, and they got some really good sites there. I want to see that in Zambia. And then in Namibia, they got some very nice beaches, and they got some very nice safaris as well. But the problem is Namibia is very, very expensive. Also, I don't know if you guys heard this, but Air Namibia has been liquidated. Air Namibia, which was their government airline, Air Namibia no longer exists. It's been liquidated. There was a flight from Windhoek, Namibia to Frankfurt, Germany, and that was pretty much one of the few direct flights they had from the rest of the world to Namibia. Most people have to go to South Africa first, then to Namibia. But from the European world to Namibia, that was pretty much Air Namibia from Frankfurt, Germany to Windhoek, Namibia. But because Air Namibia can't stay in business because of the COVID crisis, then Air Namibia has been liquidated. Gonna end the stream on talking about impeachment. President Donald John Trump, or former President Donald John Trump, should have never been impeached in the first place. The impeachment is designed for public officials that are in office. If you think they've done something like breaking the law, they go through impeachment processes. But Donald John Trump, when the impeachment was set up, was a private citizen, number one. So that whole situation was unconstitutional, and it was a waste of taxpayers' money. That's what happened. But Donald John Trump got acquitted. Now, it passed 2/3 majority in the House of Representatives. But in the Senate, they had to have 2/3 vote in the Senate to impeach him. But it didn't work. Every single Democrat voted to impeach President Trump. The only Republicans that did, I don't know all 7 of them, but they had to have 17 Republicans to vote for it. But only 7 of them did. Mitt Romney of Utah was one of them. Lisa Murkowski of Alaska was one of them. The other one, Lisa Murkowski, Mitt Romney, Susan Collins of Maine was one of them as well. And I think Grassley from Nebraska was one of them. And then I'm not quite sure the other 3. And then, though there was one, I forget which one, but there was one from Louisiana, one Republican senator from the state of Louisiana that did as well. But fortunately, the 2 U.S. senators in Mississippi, Cindy Hyde-Smith, as well as Roger Wicker, voted against the impeachment of President Trump. And I have to commend Cindy Hyde-Smith and Roger Wicker for doing that. So that was the latest that had been reported on the news. The good news is COVID-19 cases in Mississippi are steady going down. COVID-19 intensive care unit hospitals have been freed up where they're not majority COVID-19 patients anymore. I firmly believe that was largely due to the vaccine. So COVID-19 fatalities are on the way down as well. Well, normally the COVID-19 cases have been down in Mississippi. Now the past few days, because one time due to heavy rain, the outside place to get your vaccine was closed for the day, and many people had to delay their appointments. Also, some people, because of the winter storm, they went out to eat a day early for Valentine's Day, so that's why some of the cases have gone up just in a few days. But after this winter storm and everything else, I firmly believe that the cases are going to go back down. But right now, hospitals aren't filling up like they used to. So COVID-19 hospitalizations and COVID-19 fatalities have gone way, way, way down in Mississippi, largely due to, I firmly believe, the vaccine being introduced and the Pfizer vaccine, keep in mind the Pfizer vaccine being widely spread. So that's went a little bit later today because I had the iPad, was able to prop it up. So need to thank Rebellious Ruth for this. It was her idea. She gave me the ingenious idea for it. Thank you all for tuned in. The 5 likes. Thank you guys so much for that. And hope everybody's doing well. I don't know if I'm going to do a live stream later today or not, but I've been busy most mornings, so I wasn't able to watch much of Ronaldo Host's 100,000 subscribers stream. I watched some of it, and then Chris White's stream earlier, I was able to watch some of it as well. So hope everybody's doing well. Take care. God bless, and bye-bye. Bye-bye. God bless y'all.